Financial Modeling, Topic 10, Fixed Income Portfolio Management, Section 3. Understand rebalancing and real yield curve reshaping risk of our hedges. If I can just go back a couple slides from the last section, we came up with a solution to a hedging problem by buying some short-term bonds and some long-term bonds to have the same duration as my liability. The problem with this strategy is it's a little bit risky. And that risk is that what if only 30-year rates changed, or what if only short-term rates changed? In other words, what if the yield curve, if it looks like this, if I look at, say, the 1-year rate and the 30-year rate, as long as there's parallel shifts in the yield curve, I am hedged. Meaning that if rates are plus or minus 100 basis points on every point on the yield curve, I am hedged. However, if we start off with this yield curve right here, and I've bought 30-year bonds and I bought 1-year bonds to hedge my position, what if the yield curve does this? The 1-year stays the same and only the 30-year goes up. So I got a steepening of the yield curve at the 30-year sector, and it's coming from the it's fixed at the short term. So let's think about our strategy here. Again, I own the 1-year, I own the 30-year, I am short or I have liabilities in all the years. In this situation, what's going to happen is if only the 30-year note changes, let's just pretend and say only the 30-year note changes, so it's even more drastic. This happens. The yield curve does some funky thing where only the 30-year rate increases. What's going to happen is these bonds here are going to lose value. And this one cash flow in year 30 is going to lose value. So back to our spreadsheet. This, if only the 30-year rate goes up, this loses value. And if rates go up 100 basis points on a 30-year, I'm going to lose, where's my duration here? I'm going to lose 14.5% of this portfolio right here of 30 years. And I'll lose a little bit of this portfolio, this little 30-year note or 30-year cash flow. So what's going to happen? I'm going to become insolvent for this particular liability. So that is the risk of the strategy of in particular a barbell strategy is you're exposed to a yield curve reshaping. So one way to get around this yield curve reshaping risk is to do a cash flow match instead of just a duration match. A cash flow match is simply, don't just trade in the 1, 5, 10, and 30-year note. What if I just buy exact amounts of the 1 through 30-year bond and match the exact cash flow? Now that is the risk minimizing solution. However, it's something no one really does. And the reason is due to trading cost and liquidity. It's very hard to find exact amounts of 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18-year bonds. And buying all 30 bonds in these quantities would take a lot of transaction costs. However, there are certain maturities that have more liquidity. Those are places where investors trade heavily in, say, the 1s, 5s, 10s, and 30s. So you have two advantages by trading in the 1s, 5s, 10s, and 30s versus all 30. You're going to have less transaction costs, and if I go in to buy the 1s, 5s, 10s, and 30s, I'm not going to move the prices because that's where the liquidity is. So those reasons I'm not generally going to trade every single bond. And the next concept even makes an even bigger point of why I'm not going to do a cash flow hedge. And that is rebalancing. A hedge is only good for a moment, meaning that once interest rates change and yield curves reshape every single day, you're going to be out of balance. So once I put this hedge on and rates change, what if the 30-year rate goes to, say, 6%? Well, now I'm out of alignment here, right? My duration and convexity are no longer aligned. So what we do is on many businesses will have, say, a daily, weekly, or monthly rebalancing where they'll get the new data And they'll say, okay, well, I just look, this happened, so we're going to just rerun the solver and get a new quantity. And what we're going to probably wind up doing is buying more 30-year notes to get the duration back up and get the market value go up. So this market value go back up to 68,000. And also you'll have a new estimate of pension liabilities. Maybe you just added some more employees and some employees just quit. Some took early retirement. So all these cash flows are changing. These bond prices are changing, which then mean these durations are changing. So the process of rebalancing is going to be a frequent thing, either done daily, weekly, or monthly, to make sure you maintain that perfect hedge of market values are aligned and durations are matched. If you had bought all 30 of these bonds to hedge this pension liability, you can imagine how difficult this would be, as every one of these numbers will change periodically based on estimates. And you'd have to wind up buying and selling all 30 of the maturities to get back to alignment, versus an easy solution. Again, let's just say that the one thing that happened is that this 30-year rate changed. Notice, let's take a look at these quantities. It's roughly 40 one-year notes and 29 30-year notes. I'll rerun my solver. And it looks like to get back into alignment, it looks like I need to buy a few more 30-year notes. I'm sorry, one-year notes. And let me see what that value was again. My solution for the last problem was 39 and 29. This is 39 and 31. So it looks like I just need to buy a little more 30-year notes and then I'll be hedged. So that's the advantage also of trading across these sectors. Now, one thing I'll mention is to get rid of a little bit of the yield curve risk. You can also set up constraints that I have to have at least, say, 10, 20% of my hedge in each one of these maturities, which will ensure that you have a little bit of bonds along all of the yield curve. So so that's one other solution, is add another constraint that you buy a little bit of all the bonds, not to get this extreme barbell strategy. So on this topic, we talked about understanding rebalancing and yield curve risk. In the next one, we'll talk about creating hedges for a levered bank portfolio.